Mostly for Philip Beck because he's had a rough day today.
What shirt was he wearing?
So he overslept and missed 0 hour, and then thought it was sweats day. Like, yeah. So he had a rough morning. So I'm recording this for him because he missed 0 hour today. That's for you, Philip. Okay. All right. So we did not get to Rousseau the other day, and I know you were disappointed because you really want to talk about Rousseau. And Rousseau's actually a great segue into the notes we're going to cover today. Okay, so he's on page 19, and he's from Switzerland, not from Britain like the other two we talked about. He was really big into education. I don't know if you read his biography there a little bit, but he was a big advocate for education when it came to like when you participate in your learning, like to do trade academy or health academy, like you're actually shadowing and watching people or actually doing it yourself, that people learn really well that way. And there's a lot of truth to that. Some of you are very good auditory learners and can just sit there and remember everything I say, which I hate you people. And others, I think one of the best ways to learn is to teach somebody, right? So like if you teach somebody something, then you learn it even better. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, in a class like this or a history class, when you have a lot of curriculum to cover, it ends up being this lecture. Okay. And I sometimes I feel bad about that, but at other times I'm like, well, everybody's going to college, so that's what you're going to get there. So I'm prepping you for college. Okay. So, but it's a really interesting guy. And his quote at the top says, "Man was born free, and he is in chains, and he is everywhere in chains." Yeah, that's a real optimistic view of life, okay, or of human nature, or the state of nature. So the last two lines of the biography there, more importantly, his ideas on liberty, equality, and brotherhood eventually led to the French Revolution. He eventually returned to Paris and died in 1778. By valuing feeling more than reason, Rousseau is the forebearer of the Romanticism era. Okay? So I've been told you guys are not reading A Tale of Two Cities in English this year, which would be the first year like ever, which I'm really disappointed that you're not reading that. Now, Dickens is not a lot of fun to read, period, okay? But he is Dickens. You know what I mean? Like, you can get a lot out of that. So, you studied the French Revolution in your sophomore year, didn't you? So, do you remember anything about the French Revolution? If there's one thing you remember from the French Revolution, it was what? The guillotine, right? Yeah, it was violent. It was bloody, okay? And that has a lot to do with Rousseau's ideology or his philosophy here, which is helped inspire the French Revolution, okay? Where Locke really helped inspire the American Revolution, right? Like, if your government does not protect these rights, the people have a right to abolish or maybe even an obligation to abolish that government, okay? That truly inspired the American Revolution. So when you look at Rousseau, let's dig deeper here. I'm on the theory of the state of nature. Rousseau believed that there was a historical development to the state of nature. Originally, it was peaceful and free only because the abundance of nature and the small size of population. Once societies at leisure time, people began to compare themselves to others, resulting in shame, envy, pride, and contempt. More importantly, with the creation of private property, society turned to greed, competition, vanity, inequality, and social classes. It is private property which led people out of the state of nature. Okay, you guys are educated people. You listen to this. What are you hearing right now? What are you reading right there? What comes to mind?
Seems like a Native Americans.
Okay, we got communism, or maybe Marxist theory, right? Yeah, you hear it? So, I looked it up. Was Marx influenced by Rousseau? Absolutely. Marx did study Rousseau, okay, and was influenced by Rousseau. Okay, so let's continue with this. It's kind of an interesting take, okay, really a, negative view of private property. Rousseau argued that government was established through social contract, which ostensibly was to protect the rights of everyone. But really, it was set up by the powerful to ensure their continued dominance over private property, and therefore of society. He argues we need to change this by entering into a new social contract. Okay, so to protect the rights of everyone, but it was really set up for the powerful. Okay, let's dig a little further. Legitimate sovereignty is derived from everyone's submission to the general will. Okay, that's a big term right there. General will. What does that mean? Like which people? The majority. Okay. Now, this is really important, right? So, like most of the decisions in the United States today are made by majority rule, right? Yes. Okay. So there's a little schism here. There's a little break from what Locke believes and what Rousseau believes. Okay. So the general will, and Marx wrote a lot about the general will. Okay. Means that 51% of the people can dominate 49% of the people, or 60-40, or 70-30. Now, where this happens all the time in our society. So, like, let's say Congress passes a tax increase. Okay? I don't want a tax increase. I don't want to pay more taxes. But I don't really have a choice because Congress passed the law that says we're going to pay more tax. So there are times in society where we subvert the will of some for the will of others. They subvert my interests for the interests of others. That happens all the time in this country, right? But where you're not allowed to do it is with your rights. Okay, so when we write the Bill of Rights, okay, those are in stone. Those are in the Constitution. That is the law of the land. So let's talk about guns for a second, right? So, when you guys filled out the answer to gun control laws on page 7, okay, people had different opinions on this. So let's say we get to the point where 51% of the American people, or 60%, or 75% of the American people say, we need to do away with guns. Are you allowed to subvert my Second Amendment right to defend my home and my family for your general will? The answer is no, you can't. Okay, that's the difference between what Rousseau is saying and what Locke is saying. Okay, and as we continue with this, so like, now, we could change the law. We could change the Constitution, the supreme law. You could pass a constitutional amendment overturning the Second Amendment, okay? And that's going to be a super majority, right? So you've got to get 2/3 of both houses of Congress to propose that amendment. And you got to get 3/4 of the states, 38 states, to ratify that. That's a super majority, okay? Not a simple majority. You with me? Okay. In fact, as you'll learn in this class, if you didn't already know it, most legislation that goes through the United States Senate, you don't need 51 votes, you need 60 votes. Okay, you guys know about that? You guys know about that? You've heard of the filibuster. Okay, so in order to stop a filibuster, which delays the passage of a bill, you need 60 votes. Okay, so one party can filibuster a piece of legislation forever, okay? But if you get 60 votes, you can stop that filibuster. Does that make sense? So most decisions in the Senate, it's not a majority rule. Okay. Now, that's not in the Constitution. That is a rule in the Senate. That is not in the Constitution. It's a rule that they made up themselves in the Senate. Okay. so that can go away too. Okay. All right, so let's just continue a little bit further. Talked about the general will. And while such obedience may not be in everyone's personal interest, it is indeed what they really want. Well, that's quite the assumption, Jean-Jacques, okay? Even if they don't realize it, they may need to be forced to be free. He argued that this could only be done through direct democracy. Now, in a direct democracy, guys, it is 51%, or 51 of 100. It is majority rule in a direct democracy. Founders of this country, guys, feared that. They said, no way. And many of our founders referred to direct democracy as this. Mobocracy. So 51% of the population can destroy 49% if that's what they want to do. Like, and I mean literally destroy them. Okay? And the founders of this country are like, no. This is a terrible idea. Okay? Mobs act irrationally. Yes? When people get mad or upset about something, they act irrationally. Now, if you've been living under a rock, you hear about what happened in Memphis last week, right? Everybody know what's going on in Memphis? Okay, so there was an attempt to arrest a young black man. As it turns out, this young black man has no criminal record. It was a police stop. It became very violent, and they beat this guy. Did he die like 3 days later, was it? But anyhow, there have been 5 cops that have been brought up on second-degree murder charges. Now, all 5 of the cops were black. Okay? The mother of this individual that was killed has asked that there be only peaceful protest. And for the most part, that's been the case, which is really good. You know what I mean? But as we saw with the George Floyd situation, or the situation in Ferguson, Missouri before that, we had a mob. Okay? The right to protest is in a mob. When it turns violent, it becomes a mob. Okay? And so this is what the French Revolution was like. Okay? It was a mob mentality. Okay? And they act irrational. And you go back to what Rousseau said here. Okay? He said, by valuing feeling more than rash reason. Okay? So this is done on emotion, not on principle or reason. You follow me? Okay. Thank you. So yeah, it's just kind of an interesting take. Okay, so direct democracy. He did not think that representative democracy, where people elect representatives to vote for them, was strong enough system to save us from the harms of private property. Okay, this is what inspired the French Revolution again. Okay, so look, obviously Rousseau brings up some good points, but in the end, we are going to reject this. Okay, we're going to reject this in the United States. Okay. Any thoughts on Rousseau? Any comments? I mean, obviously he's an important person. Yeah.
I don't really like his logic when he's like, it only became bad and we left the state of nature when there became like private property and leisure time, because now that's just like fun stuff that people fight over. But before it would have been like food and shelter.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be viewed as more
survival,
important?
right? Yeah. But there was an abundance, he said, of food and prey that you could, that you could get and so forth. I think he's living in a pipe dream of some sort. You know what I mean? Like, come on. There was a lot of violence before we had private property. So it's interesting, but definitely you get a really Marxist kind of undertone to this. And if you think about Marxism, guys, it is based on this idea that the majority, right? like we just talked about this in history class the other day. What does Bolshevik mean? Bolshevik means the majority. Okay, and so yeah, it's this idea. Okay, so anyhow, thankfully we rejected that, and the founders did too. Okay, so like I said, great segue. Last thing we were talking about was dictatorships, right? And I think the last thing we probably wrote down was totalitarian.
Yep.
Okay, so we're talking about different forms of government based on the number of people that can participate. And so what Rousseau said was that everybody should participate, which of course is what we call what? Democracy. And I can give you a simple definition for that when you're ready. Democracy. Supreme political authority. Supreme political authority rests with who? The people. Supreme political authority rests with the people. Okay, so when we look at democracy, there's two types, as you can already figure. Okay, in Rousseau's case, direct democracy, or what people would refer to as pure democracy. Now, we can do pure democracy in a setting this size, okay, or maybe in a village of some sort, okay, but as you expand further than that, that becomes difficult. So to define this, everyone votes on everything. Everyone votes on everything. It's a direct democracy. There are no direct democracies in the world today. Unless you want to say, I mean, communist countries are supposed to be like this, where everyone's equal and everyone has an equal say. You know, so I could say like China or North Korea. Wait a second. No, that doesn't work. Okay, but that's the way they're supposed to be. Okay, the general will. And so there are no good examples of this today. I mean, how do the nuns, the sisters, how do they live? Like,
They have
yeah, but she throws down the gauntlet, right? She's in charge.
Yeah.
It's a dictatorship.
Yeah.
Same thing at a seminary, you know, right?
Isn't the mother superior like elected though?
Okay, so then more of a representative situation. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know a lot about it. Okay, but yeah, I mean, like you could do this, like you could get with some people that you knew and say, like, buy it. I don't know. Well, maybe you could just squat on some land out in New Mexico, grow your own food, and share it with everybody, and everybody has a say on everything. And you could own property, I guess, if we're talking about a democracy, right? And everybody, you know, votes on everything. Now, could we do that today in the United States? Could we become a direct democracy logistically with the technology we have today?
Yeah.
If the government gave every one of us one of these, okay, and every morning you wake up and you get notifications. This is what we're voting on today for the U.S. This is what we're voting on today for the state of Kansas. This is what we're voting on today for the local government and the city council. So, should we continue to fund the Ukraine with weapons and money? Yes or no? Should we send F-16s to the Ukraine? We just sent 31 tanks. We're sending 31 Abrams tanks, if you didn't hear. This is an escalation. Germany's sending tanks too. Okay? This is an escalation. Okay? Did anybody ask you if we should do that? No, they're not even debating it in Congress. It's just done by the Biden administration. Okay. Okay, now, should we build a second bridge across the San Francisco Bay at the cost of $500 million? Yes or no? Now, why are they asking you that? We're not from San Francisco. Well, some of that would be paid for with federal dollars, right? Should we continue affirmative action policies in this country? Should we ban CRT in the classroom? Yes or no? You know what CRT is? You know what CRT is? Yeah. Can you explain it?
Is the thing about you?
That's a big thing. Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah. This is something that's taught in law schools, CRT. Okay, critical race theory. Okay, most Americans don't know what it is, but it's being pushed in our elementary schools now. Okay, oppressor, oppressed, 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 oppressors, oppressed.
Yeah, I was like,
All based on race. Okay, like teaching 5-year-olds this. Okay, so you're teaching 5-year-old African-American students that they're oppressed by their classmates, by their white classmates. Okay, great way to start life, right? So no, seriously, like this is being pushed. Gender ideology being pushed in our elementary school. Okay, they just had DeSantis is in trouble with the national media because some of you guys take AP classes, right? So there's an AP class on African American history. The state of Florida, they were going to try and do this African American history, but about a third of the curriculum gets into this stuff like queer identity stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's part of the African American AP history class is queer theory. And Governor DeSantis is like, hold up now. No, these are high school students. Okay. Now, if you want to do that in law school or a student wants to take that in college, then they can choose to take that. But we're not doing this in the state of Florida. Of course, he's racist because it's an African American studies class, right? And he's against it because of the crap. About a third of the curriculum is like, a lot of it's Marxist theory. And he's like, no, we're not teaching that in Florida schools. Well, then he's a racist. Okay. No, take that crap out. And yes, give the opportunity for kids to take African American AP history class and have it actually be African American history, not ideology. You understand? There's a difference. So this is the kind of stuff that people don't know about. You guys, you got school. Some of you guys have jobs. Some of you guys are doing extracurricular activities. You don't have time to pay attention to all of these issues, right? That's why I'm here. I try to inform you, right? Like that whole thing we did, I'm trying to help you, but you can only help yourself by becoming informed. Fact of the matter is, most people are stupid. So we're going to send this a text out to everybody, notification to vote on the war in Ukraine. People don't know what the hell's going on. They don't know anything about history over there. You know what I mean? Why would we let people do that? That's really dumb. For lack of a better term. It'd be a really ignorant thing to do. Okay? So, no, we're not doing this. Okay? Now, why in the heck, when you turn on the TV or listen to President Biden talk or other politicians, they keep talking about democracy? Like this is a threat to our democracy. What are you talking about? We don't live in a democracy. Guys, you can look and read the entire U.S. Constitution. You can read the entire Declaration. You can read the Bill of Rights. And nowhere will you find the word democracy. It's not in any of our founding documents. don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic, right? Which is a representative democracy. Okay? There's a huge difference. You guys know it, right? It drives me crazy when these people say that. And there's an agenda behind it because they want you to think you have a say on everything and you don't. And that's a good thing. But people are like, what do you mean I don't have a say? Well, dude, you get to vote. Okay, now when I voted for governor, I didn't vote for Laura Kelly. Too bad. When I voted for the House, I voted for Ron Estes. He won. I agree with Ron Estes on a lot of things. I disagree with Laura Kelly on some things. That's life. But 51% cannot destroy the other 49%. Not in this country. Because you can't take away our rights, especially the ones given to us by God. Right? We lose that, we lose our freedom. Okay? So, the second type of democracy is, yes, representative. Democracy. Okay? This one's easy to define as well. Oh, by the way, yeah, let's just. This is a republic. The vast majority of countries in the world today are republics. Okay? Some use the name republic, but they're not really republics. Like China, the People's Republic of China. Republics of China. It's not. What's this one say? Soviet, or the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Not really a republic. All right. Which is what communists like to do, is fool you. Like Hitler, National Socialist German Workers' Party, like he gave a crap about the work, right? First thing he did was second thing he did was abolish labor union. Okay. Which protect workers. Yeah. Okay. So, representative democracy, to define it for you. Small group of people chosen by people, to represent their will. Again, sometimes when you go vote, you're on the losing end of things, and the person you wanted to represent you doesn't win. It happens, okay? And if you're a Democrat in Kansas, it happens a lot. If you're a Republican in California, it happens a lot. You're on the losing end, okay? But you know what you have the freedom to do in this country? Move to Florida. Okay? You can choose where you live, okay? Oh, by the way, speaking of Florida, I'm going to be gone this Friday. Sorry. Okay. Another paid deduct. I got a friend, good friend of mine, high school teammate, classmate, college roommate. He's the head coach at University of West Florida. They opened their season in Lakeland, Florida this weekend. And so my other buddy was like, hey, you guys want to get together and we'll surprise Coach Jeffcoat, show up at his game. Okay, so flying out Thursday night, be back Monday morning, Sunday night. Okay, you guys are going to watch a video. See if Holman's texted me back yet. Holman will be your sub. Okay. All right. Sorry. You only live once, right? Yeah. These are my boys, fellas. You guys got that? Your girls? You guys got a group name for your group? Group of fellas? Geek Squad. There's 9 of us. Huh? The Geek Squad? The Geek Squad. Okay, so, now, let me confuse you. Okay, this is simple, right? This is really easy, right? Pretty much everything we've done at this point, pretty easy, okay? So, there are actually two types of republics, okay? So we're gonna talk about that, which can be a little bit confusing, okay? I'm gonna give you the first one and see if you can tell me the second one. Parliamentary system. The other one is called, nobody's gotten it today. Let's see if somebody's got it.
What letter does it start?
No?
Oh,
So you gotta guess and be wrong first, maybe. Like they did, they tried. Okay, you got parliamentary system and no. Socialist will be an economic system, which we will be discussing tomorrow. Nope, thanks for trying. Good try, that's been tried many times today.
Wait, why is that presidential?
Mr. Rewright, I was gonna say presidential.
This is my second guess.
Okay, we'll talk about parliamentary first because it's quite a bit different and foreign to you. Although some of this you already know and you don't realize it. Okay, so the biggest difference between these two systems is how the legislative branch and the executive branch are in relation to each other. Okay, so in a parliamentary system, the executive branch and the legislative branch are intermingled. They are intertwined. Okay. In other words, there's not a separation of power here. Remember, one of the things we talked about the U.S. Constitution, checks and balances, separation of powers, right? Here they are intertwined. Okay, so in order to be the PM, which is what? Prime Minister, you must be an MP, not military police. What's an MP? Good try. One of the words is on the board right now. A member of Parliament. Okay? In order to become the Prime Minister, you have to be in the legislative branch. You've got to be a member of the legislative branch to be elected chief executive. Okay? So, when we talk about parliamentary systems, we've got Prime Minister, okay, is a term that a lot of parliamentary systems use for their chief executive. Okay? What does Germany use for their chief executive?
Chancellor.
Yeah, chancellor. Others use premier. And to make it really confusing, some of these countries use president. Good morning. Okay, so you've got two things here. You've got your chief executive. Okay, they run the day-to-day affairs. They're in charge of the executive branch. And then you have what's called the head of state. which is ceremonial in nature. So your chief executive is going to be a prime minister, a chancellor, a premier, president. Prime minister is probably the most common, okay? And then you're going to have a head of state. So when you look at Germany, the chief executive is the chancellor, but the head of state is somebody different. Does anybody know who the head of state is in Germany? The president. Yeah, it's talking about confusing. Okay, now, let's look at Britain. The chief executive is the prime minister. The head of state is whom? King Charles III, right? Does he have any power? Not really. Now, the British have the English Commonwealth of Nations. And any guys ever watched The Crown about Queen Elizabeth II? It's really good. So you can kind of see her role, and part of that is because she's popular. You know what I mean? Like, so she can have a really positive impact on foreign leaders because she's really popular. I mean, people adore her. Now, I don't know if Charles III is going to have that same appeal. He doesn't with me. I loved Queen Elizabeth. I thought she was awesome. But Charles, no, I've heard him talk. I don't like it. I think he sucks. Okay. Personally. Now, it has nothing to do with the fact that he wanted to marry, a commoner. I respect that. You marry who you love. Okay. But, yeah, so anyhow. Okay, so, Japan. Emperor. Head of state. Prime minister. Chief executive. Okay. Now, because you have to be a member of the legislature, one of the most endearing parts of being in a parliamentary system is this, that I really like, is that if you go watch the House of Commons, okay, their room is separated like it's a long room. You got one party on this side, one party on the other. And then at the front, the prime minister, so this would be the conservative prime minister, he stands here. The opposition party leader stands here right in front of them. Okay? And they're allowed, the opposition leader is allowed to question the prime minister. And he has to respond. People on the other party can ask him questions. They can yell at him. They can boo at him. They can hiss. They can cheer. Your prime minister can be put on the spot. In fact, if a majority of the parliament has a vote of no confidence in the prime minister, they can call for new elections at any time. Okay? And which happens in places like Israel, France, okay, and Britain, right? Britain just went through how many prime ministers in the span of like 6 weeks, right? Boris Johnson left, they had that new lady in there, and like she's gone, and then they got this other guy in there, right? Like this, okay? Vote of no confidence. In fact, the prime minister themselves can call for new elections at any time. Oh, you have no confidence in me, do you? Well, let's just have an election and see if that's really how you feel. Now, you got to have some stones to do that, okay? But they do from time to time. Like, oh, you think you can do it better? Well, let's go, okay? Hey, yeah, no problem. Presidential is really short and simple. I'll start with that tomorrow, and then we'll get into economic theories as forms of government, which is always fun. Be prepared to take a lot of notes tomorrow. Yeah. Yippee! Yippee! You guys have